We've all seen the headlines, right? The flashy videos of new jets rolling off the assembly line. It looks like Russia's Air Force is undergoing a massive modernization. But what's the real story behind the official narrative? Well, that's what we're here to break down.
So, on the surface, Russian state media is painting this picture of a seriously resurgent military. All through 2024, we've been seeing these reports of new batches of Su-57s, Su-35s, and Su-34 bombers being delivered to frontline units. It really suggests their military machine is just humming along, churning these things out.
And all this new hardware, it naturally leads to the big question, the one everyone wants to ask. How does their top-of-the-line fighter, the Su-57 Felon, actually stack up against America's F-35? But, as we're about to find out, a simple one-on-one comparison, it completely misses the point.
Okay, so to really get to the bottom of this, we're going to break it down piece by piece. First, we'll look at the new hardware filling up Russia's skies. Then, we'll dive into the clash of philosophies between their top fighters. After that, we'll talk about the pilots themselves, the doctrines that guide them, how they've actually performed in battle, and finally, what this all means for the big picture of air power.
All right, let's kick things off with the hardware. What exactly is making up this modernizing force that we keep hearing so much about?
So what we're seeing this year is a pretty steady stream of both brand new and upgraded aircraft. We're talking about the 5th-gen Su-57 Felon, the super-capable Su-35S Flanker E, the Su-34M fullback fighter bomber, and the updated Su-30SM-2. And what that tells us is that there's a serious, sustained production effort going on to beef up their Air Force.
Now, for the main event, that Su-57 versus F-35 matchup. And this is where it gets really interesting, because when you dig into how these two jets are actually designed to fight, some huge differences start to pop out. Just looking at the raw numbers here, you can immediately see two totally different design philosophies at play. The Su-57, with those two big engines, is built for raw power, incredible speed, and just massive range. The F-35, with its one engine, is clearly prioritizing other things. These specs are our first big clue that these planes were built to do very different jobs. And this really gets to the heart of it. The F-35 is all about what's called information dominance. Think of it like a stealthy quarterback in the sky. Its whole purpose is to see the enemy long before it's ever seen and strike first. The Su-57, on the other hand, is built for pure kinematic performance. It's a powerful, agile brawler that's designed to get in a turning fight and win with sheer speed and maneuverability.
And you can see that philosophical split right here in the technology. The F-35 is designed for all-aspect stealth, which means it's incredibly hard to detect on radar from any angle. The Su-57 kind of compromises some of that stealthiness to get better aerodynamic performance. It tries to make up for that with really powerful sensors, like its infrared system that looks for engine heat, to try and sniff out stealthy opponents. But, and this is key, its ability to fuse all that data together is seen as way more limited than the F-35's advanced network. So you see, the big takeaway here isn't about which plane is better. They aren't even designed for the same kind of fight. It's truly like comparing apples and oranges. Each jet is built to perfectly execute a completely different military strategy.
But of course, a fancy machine is only as good as the person operating it. And that takes us to the most critical human factor, the pilots who are actually sitting in those cockpits.
I mean, just look at this number. The United States invests a staggering amount of money in every single fighter pilot. To train one pilot for the F-22 Raptor, which is pretty similar in complexity to the F-35, costs nearly $11 million. It's this intense, multi-year process designed to create the absolute best aviators on the planet.
And you can see that experience gap right from day one. Before even getting to their first combat squadron, a U.S. fighter pilot has already logged about 250 hours in the air. Their Russian counterpart, around 200 hours.
And here's the kicker. That initial gap, it doesn't just stay the same, it gets wider. Over the course of a career, because of differences in funding and just how often they get to fly, the average American fighter pilot ends up with roughly double the real-world cockpit experience of their Russian counterpart. That is a massive, massive difference in skill when things get serious.
So how does all this, the different jets, the pilot experience, fit into the big picture? Well, that's where military doctrine comes in. These are the core philosophies that guide how each country thinks about war.
Okay, so the U.S. approach is often summed up as fires to enable decisive maneuver.
Think of it like this. Air power and artillery are the key that unlocks the door. Their job is to blast the enemy, suppress them, and disrupt them so that the ground forces, the tanks, and the infantry can move in, surround them, and land the final decisive blow.
Russian doctrine is basically the complete opposite. Maneuver to position fires. In this case, the ground forces are like the setup crew. Their job is to go out, find the enemy, and pin them down, making them a nice big target for the real knockout punch, which comes from an overwhelming storm of artillery and missile strikes.
And if you want a perfect example of this doctrine in action, look no further than the Tu-160 bomber. This thing is not a stealthy jet designed to sneak past enemy lines. No, it's a long-range missile truck. Its whole job is to fly around in safe airspace, way far away from the fight, unleash a huge volley of cruise missiles, and then just turn around and head home to get more. It's all about delivering that massive firepower from a very safe distance.
So we've got the jets, we've got the pilots, and we've got the doctrines. How have these totally different systems held up under the ultimate test, actual combat?
And this is the billion-dollar question, isn't it? The one that's puzzled so many people. On paper, Russia's Air Force went into the war in Ukraine with a massive advantage, both in the number of planes and in the technology. And yet, it has completely failed to gain control of the skies. So why?
Well, analysis from respected think tanks like the Royal United Services Institute gives us a pretty shocking piece of the answer. A constant, costly pattern of fratricide, that's friendly fire, has been a huge problem for Russian forces. Their own air defense systems are regularly shooting down their own plane.
And this is happening because of a whole toxic brew of systemic problems. They lack realistic, large-scale training exercises, which means their units just haven't practiced working together. That leads to terrible coordination between their pilots and their ground-based air defense crews. Add to that the high number of experienced pilots they've lost and the desperate move of pulling flight instructors into combat, which then cripples their ability to train new pilots. It's a vicious downward spiral.
So after looking at the hardware, the pilots, the doctrine, and the pretty sobering real-world results, what's the big takeaway from all of this?
And that brings us right back to where we started. Focusing on whether one jet can beat another in a dogfight completely misses the forest for the trees. The true measure of air power isn't about one piece of hardware. It's about the entire system, the whole ecosystem that supports it. And that leaves us with the real question. Which complete system, the machine, the pilot, the training, and the doctrine, is more resilient, more adaptable, and ultimately more lethal on the modern battlefield?